Hello friends, Dodger here. Welcome back to Automation, the car company tycoon game. Today we are continuing on our Vanity, or Fantasy, I believe it's Fantasy campaign, Lite campaign that is, which is currently, I believe, 1 to 2 episodes away from completion as the campaign ends in 2020. It is the year 2011, and we have recently started to engineer the Bionic Mark II, and we have already in production the Zoids Mark III. Those are two of our last-ditch effort Halo cars to try and just have as much fun as we possibly could with the end of our Lite campaign here, as our company has done quite well. The surprise from last episode was the fact that the Magnet Mark III, one of our top-selling vehicles and one of our biggest money makers, went out of production due to a safety violation in our home of Gazmea. So that's a huge loss to our company as far as money income. Luckily, the Jaws Mark II and the Truffle Mark III, as well as the Magnet in its sales elsewhere, are pulling the weight of the company and helping us still maintain a strong number on the profit. Overall, the economy, as it looks for the rest of our campaign, probably going to stay in the average area. That's just kind of the trend it's been on. We're on a little bit of an incline right now, which is not going to be helping the Magnet at all. But overall, in the areas of like Arcana or Frenia, I believe is where it's actually selling, it's low enough that the budget stuff is quite strong there, and it's selling well there. But for today, I don't think it would be fair to end this campaign without making a replacement Magnet, because it's done us so much good over the history of the company, along with the Truffle, that I feel it's important to bring it back, and that might be our last car for the duration of the campaign. We'll have to see. It'll be close to coming down to needing a new Jaws, which is our family sedan slash rally spec car, but it'll be iffy. It depends how long the Magnet Mark IV takes to create. So today we're going to jump right into making a new car and making the Magnet replacement. I don't have too much of a concept of what I would like to do with it, but if we think about the early 2010s as far as how the real world worked, small cars have indeed started to make a comeback as efficiency and economy have really become very important. They've never really massively caught on in the American market, and Gazmea is, of course, replicating an American market. It's not necessarily exactly like it, but you get the general idea that that's what that area is supposed to replicate. We're going to try and see what we can do to make a car that's relevant to the American market and as much fun as possible for this super budget category. That, of course, is what the Magnet is. And what that means is we need the smallest car possible. And of the modern bodies, there's not too much available. We're looking for things that are sub 90 centimeters, or like, no, is that right? No, sub 90 inches, sorry. Too many different units of measurement. But there's really not a lot available to us in the last 10 years. The only one that is available to us is this guy, which I don't think I've ever seen before. It has a small convertible, it has a small hardtop convertible, and it has a small coupe body. I think the small coupe body is the area we need to go, but it needs to have as much capacity, interior capacity and cargo volume as possible, of which we cannot add too terribly much to, but we can add some via adding to that rear deck area. Other than that, there's not too terribly much we can do to make this any larger, but it is a neat looking little thing, and I feel like we can make like a mini sports car out of this, as well as the mini economy car out of it. I think that would be pretty cool to try, and there's no risk involved. If this car completely flopped and failed, there's not enough time in the campaign left for it to actually, like, drag us down at all. So I think it's worth giving a try. So today, we build the Magnet Mark IV, and congratulations to Magnet. Of course, through this Lite campaign, we've been naming cars after notable people in the comments, or just people that made comments and caught my eye. So the Magnet is the only car, I believe, that will get a 4th generation. So very successful vehicle there. Alright, let's move on to the chassis, where we'll see monocoque be the choice there. For material, I think corrosive resistance is the cheaper of the two. Where is material cost? Galvanized is cheaper, but then you have to pay more for a factory with galvanization. It's a tough choice. Their safety is average on both. The AHS steel would be safer, and safety is obviously something very important for this. Yeah, I think we'll probably go for the galvanized steel because we have familiarity with it. And I believe the Magnet Mark III used that as well. So we should already have that in place. This car chassis has front transverse or longitudinal available to us. For the sake of trying to do the mini sports car thing, I'm going to do it longitudinal, even if that does give us some slightly lower ratings in the cabin space department. We'll do McPherson strut up front and semi-trailing arm in the rear because of cost. I need to keep this thing as cheap as we possibly can. And for the body, again, as cheap as we can, and corrosive resistant steel is that, I believe. Material cost. Tooling cost is actually lower in fiberglass, but the limited production would hurt us. So yeah, corrosive resistant steel. Easy for me to say. Not really. Alright, design-wise, let me see what I can do with this thing. 2012 or 13. So we're pretty much looking at modern era here. Looks like this body has a little bit of a clipping issue where the fender part wants to cut through the headlights. I'm trying to work around it, but it's pretty much gonna have to be the case. We might just have to try and ignore that that's happening. I don't mind these headlights. It's already looking a little Fiesta-ish, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think the modern Fiesta or Focus designs are bad. They're a little too plasticky looking, but that's a modern design language in general. I in particular really hate the honeycomb they're putting in grills these days. It just looks so cheap and unnecessary. These seem to be one of the only headlights that doesn't have the clipping issue. They are projector based and LEDs for turn signals, so they're pretty modern, but in design, I don't know if they're as modern as those other ones. We'll have to see what we can do with grills to try and re-modernize this thing. Boy, that's a weird-looking, angry front end. This grill sticks out way too much for this design. Not gonna work. This one here is actually kind of vaguely based off of the Fiesta and the Focus design. In this case, I'm not loving it. Now, personally, I really love the way this particular grill works and looks. It's very angry looking. It's muscular. I don't know if it fits the theme of the car correctly, however. It's yeah, it's a little bit more aggressive, I think, than the car needs to look. Now it starts to look a little bit more sinister and a little less angry, with a little bit of the smile in the grill. I don't know how particularly 2012, 2013 it is. I like the design. It's good. I just don't know how era correct it is. Not that that's super important. This is all fantasy. You know, this is a whole different timeline than the real timeline. But I'm still working on it. Era correct or not, I'm going for it. I like it. Let's do it. In the back, I think I'm going to go for these longer taillights and assemblies to try and widen the rear a bit, as it looks pretty narrow in the back. Now this is a very small car. Like, you gotta back up from it a bit. You gotta remember that it's really tiny. So proportions have to stay in a very small box, or else it starts to look very goofy. You know what it looks like from the rear quarter? A little baby Supra, a little baby Mark IV Supra. How fitting, since this is the Mark IV Magnet. But it's an interesting concept for a microcar to have. And our microcar will be longitudinal rear-wheel drive. Engineering time is very low on that. It's gonna, again, take away some of the very good budget car stuff. But we have a different goal than the previous magnets. We're trying to sell to more markets. This thing looks good in every color, really. I've clicked too many. How about the yellow? Even yellow it looks okay in. I really don't like it in yellow, but it looks okay. The green, it's particularly handsome in, but I think the dark red's probably still my favorite. Alright, so the first trim we're going to be making, and of course the first engine variant, will be for the economy version. So that's got to be as cheap as possible and efficient as possible. And what I would like for this engine to do is have the ability to play cards into both hands here, both the economy, and I would like to make some kind of weird performance version. Inline 3s are typically what magnets have had, because inline 3s are the cheapest to make. They are very small, very light, and can be very efficient. And we only need 50 to 75 horsepower. The problem is, in the game, there's no turbos on inline 3. So if we wanted to go crazy, we'd have to have a crazy, naturally aspirated build, which can be fun, and it's going to be interesting to try and do that. Okay, first thing I want to look at here is overhead cam. If we did a 4-valve overhead cam engine, we could still have EVL, but what's the price difference between that and a dual overhead cam 4-valve? So 84 material cost, 6.65 production units versus 106 and 8.91. So we're talking double production units and 25% or so more material costs. I think it's more logical to go for the single cam because we're not really going to get that much performance gain out of dual overhead cams for this thing. The max RPM could be an issue. However, this engine is going to be so small, actually much smaller than I already have it, that I think that won't be too much of an issue. I would like it to be right around 1000 cc or 1 liter. Bottom end parts will be extremely simple, especially for this version. It's still the case that direct injection is an extremely high engineering time thing to do, so therefore we're not going to go there since we're so far into the campaign. It's so late that I don't want to really waste time on that, even though it is extremely good and extremely efficient. Alright, so we're aiming for the 50 to 75 horsepower range. Let's see how we do. Looks like we're at 58 horsepower, 57 foot-pounds of torque. That bizarre inline 3 sound. Opens up nicely. We're at 20% on the economy. I would like to be no lower than 24%. So we got some tuning to do. 73 reliability, though, is outstanding. So there's more tuning to do on this thing just yet. I had missed something. I had left the exhaust way too big, so we can get some more economy out of it just with that. And I was able to lower the fuel mix way down to lean, and we were already up to 22.48 and 63 horsepower. Those are good numbers, not quite as good as I would like them. With some careful tuning, we were able to get 60 foot-pounds at 55 horsepower and a 24% economy rating, which is pretty much perfect. Doesn't sound like a lot, but this thing's not even going to weigh 2,000 pounds, So as long as we can get it in the, I would say 11 seconds 0 to 60 range, it's then drivable around town. It's able to get the highway, even if it's not super comfortable on the highway, and fits this category correct. Now we need to move on to the chassis. Let me go ahead and name this engine the i3 base, and this is the Eco version. And now I need to do the trim. Alright, we're closing in on an initial score once I hit passive. Now I'm hoping for at least above 100 on the budget categories. I expect this to be too expensive, or slightly so too expensive for these categories, but we'll just have to see. Okay, city budget 131, fun budget 125, and yeah, like I said, 52 and 57 on the affordability. Slightly more expensive than previous magnets, but I think if it's high enough scoring, we can offset that. So now I need to do a little bit of tuning here. Our gearing is certainly way off, and we can get some more miles per gallon. How about 52 miles per gallon? Now that's great and all, but a 16-second 0 to 60 is not doable. You can't drive a car around town like that. So I need to back this gearing way up to get a 3-gear spread 0 to 60 at least, and see what we can do to get that lower. We may even end up giving this thing a little bit more power if we can't get that lower than it's showing right now. Despite being more expensive, the 6-speed box was able to get us down to a 14.5, but it does have a wheel spin issue at that rating. Overall, the price didn't come up very much at all. 6-speed versus 5-speed is not a huge deal. The automatic costs more, and the budget people do not want that at all. They would rather deal with the inconsistent, or not inconsistent, but the more troublesome manual transmission to save some money. We do have free quality to use here, and that gets us down to a 14.3, so that is good. In the wheel spin department, we could consider larger, wider tires. That gets us, actually increases our 0 to 60 probably because they're heavier. Let's see. The bigger rear tires, it's pretty happy with. So a little bit of stagger. On 175, that's probably getting carried away, right? Yeah. That seems to be the happy medium right there, 155 and then a 165. And a 14.2. It's not fast. It is not fast at all, but for the kind of car it is, it's okay. Brakes, 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 brakes. We have good front and just a little bit too much rear, it looks like. Oh, no, we need less, actually. How's the fade? Okay, so the fade's a little bit of a concern. So, would that be in the rotor size? Possibly so. 3.6, probably the rear. Yeah. They brake efficiently enough, however, there's not enough rotor there to get the heat out of them, so we need to make them bigger. They are solid discs in the back. I could use a smaller vented. Let's see. Yeah, but there's production units there. We're more familiar with vented at this point, however. How much smaller could we make them then? Virtually the smallest. Okay, so that's what we'll do. That is what we'll do, and then just keep the comfort pads on there so that it doesn't tend to want to lock up the rears, and you can see our scores are coming up. They are indeed coming up. Alright, for the under tray, I chose semi-clad. I'm going to look at the none. Yeah, okay, so it's cheaper to do that. It's really not advantageous at all for this car. It already gets amazing miles per gallon, so the cheaper no under tray option is probably the way to go. For reliability, we can reduce that arrow, but just by one click, to give us that miles per gallon back, basically. And we're done here. Let's look. Did I get the brake quality? I did. Let's look at the interior stuff. The only things to really look at here, we can't increase the quality of the interior for no additional money. Saves us some weight, got us back under 2,000 pounds. That's Very nice. Let's see. We already have the safety. However, we need to look at something here soon. Let me do a little tuning on the suspension, which probably just needs a bit of a dampener stiffening in the front. Really nothing at all. We can do the quality increase. We are bottoming out just dead. So up it needs to go. There we go. That's good. And then, oh well, I actually liked it raised up a little bit. Fine. We could, is it understeering too much or is it oversteering? It's right on the good part of that, really, for this kind of car. Okay, so we can get it even just a little bit closer to that 1.0 drivability. There we go, right there. That should be the sweet spot. Really getting those scores up. Okay, cool. So that's the economy car we have here. Sure, it takes 14 seconds to get to 60, but it can do 110 if you really need it to. And, you know, it could go on the highway if you needed to, but really, this is all for going around town in the city. And it should be looking good in those areas. What I wanted to look at is this chart here, which I have ignored to my disadvantage in the past, and that is the minimum safety requirements. In Gazmea, there is a 35 safety limit in the last era here in the 10s. In Fruinia, there's a 40, but in Arcana, there's only a 28. So 40 is where we would like to be. I don't know if we're going to get there, but that's where we would like to be. Let's look at it. Where are we at with that? 37. So we would have to undoubtedly go to advanced safety to do that, which is going to make it cost more. It's going to make it heavier at 21, 28, but it's probably worth it to try and sell it to other markets. Let's see, ABS. Sure, it makes it cheaper. Sure, it makes it lighter, but the buyers like it, as well as power steering. So it will stay. The weight has affected the handling somewhat negatively. I was able to get that back to squared away. And then that would leave us with all three markets buying this vehicle, which I think is important. Let's see how much of a markup we can stay above 100 on some categories. And now the good news is that it's a very broad car as of right now. But 30% is what I would say is a minimum, and we're still above 100 in multiple categories. So it looks as though this base model will be good for us. I think we can do that. As of right now, if we went to just click over to engineering, it looks like it would take 2 years, 8 months. Probably 12 months of that is in that extra safety. I'm betting we could probably fund this down. Yeah, it's 2.5 years or so. Easily. The engine, 2 years, 7 months. That's very doable as well, and we could fund that down to the same. Okay, cool. Now, with that out of the way, let's try to have some fun with this thing. So the idea here is I would like to make a sports version of this car, but I would like to do it with adding as little engineering as possible. We're just going to tune what we have to make it into a better performing car. Let's see if we could maybe get it down to like a 10-second 0 to 60, something that would actually be somewhat fun around town, or maybe even better than that. We'll see. 8 seconds is kind of where I would consider the entry level of sports cars to be, like my 240SX in 1991. Yeah, it had about an 8-second 0 to 60. For its time, that was considered pretty sporty. By today, that's considered sporty enough. But for a car like this, a car that would get still, 30 miles per gallon, 40 miles per gallon, that would be pretty good. So we start with the engine. We need to clone the Eco, and well, there's a weird box over that, but I think I can type sports. Hopefully someday we'll be able to see that. There we go. And as you can see, this is all locked, and this is open. Now, I probably don't need to change any of this. What we will be changing is basically everything else. So, we're going to see how much of an NA build we can do without adding any money to this project. Currently, it is 51 engineering time. Let's try not to bring that above 60 or so, or as little as possible. So, of course, a very aggressive VVL profile and a pretty aggressive base cam profile. Actually, let's make it all the way. Let's go to 100. And we'll increase compression significantly. Now, it's going to want to explode as of right now, but don't you worry, because we can throw a performance filter on there, or intake, and run it on super unleaded, and give it fuel mix all the way up to, we'll go up to 12.3. We're still knocking a little bit at that point, but that's okay, because we can, well, we're going to increase that, sure, but we can go down on this cam profile, or sorry, this compression. It doesn't need to be quite that high. And all of this will probably change when our exhaust gets bigger. Yeah, that should be plenty. So we start to reach valve float at about 8,600, but it's very doable to have that many RPM. Currently it's making 107 horsepower, but has a very weird power curve, so let's see if we can work on that a bit. That will involve changing this cam profile. There we go, it's a little bit smoother. Up to 70, and let's see, is there any compression left in her? Sure is. Also, in the exhaust department, can we put a tubular header on there? How much engineering time is that? It's low. It's not very low, but it's low, so it's not going to add too much to it. For a pretty healthy power increase. Cool, cool. 110 horsepower is no joke. I mean, it's a motorcycle engine at this point, basically. 110 horsepower at 8,300 RPM. Yeah. So let's look. 52.9. So we barely added any engineering time to this for basically double the horsepower. Now, granted, we've halved its economy, but this thing's so light that even with a 12.81 economy, it will probably still get 30 miles per gallon. So what does a 1 liter 110 horsepower inline 3 singing to 8,400 RPM sound like? I guess we're gonna have to find out. Actually sounds pretty gnarly. I've found that the odd cylinder engines do in general. 3 cylinders and 5 cylinders have a pretty aggressive sound to them. So that's interesting. And I'm not displeased with this at the moment. I think this will probably do our goal of getting us under 10 seconds 0 to 60. Alright, I think I'm done. I think I'm happy. And our material cost is $666, so it's got to be a good sign. We're ready to go. And still a reliability of 69, also a good sign. So, moving on. Alright, well maybe moving on after I give it a little rev, huh? It's pretty cool. Okay. Now we're ready to see what changes to make. Oh, we're going to need some big changes to do with the trim. Alright, so remember how I said we get 30 miles per gallon? I may have exaggerated that a little bit. 24 to 25 miles per gallon is more likely at this point. But we're setting this thing up to be a tiny little rocket at the moment. So I'm gonna be okay with that. Wheel spin is 5.4%, and even with the larger rear tires and sports compound, that is an issue. But 5.4% isn't terrible. Let's see, we did the brakes. The brakes are up to snuff now. No fade. Oh, we're back to fade a little. No fade. The other thing I need to do is... Yes. Goodbye, safety. Goodbye, 100 pounds. That should help us. Well, it brings our mileage up and should help our 0 to 60 as well. Hopefully I don't need to change the gearing. Nope. But we also need to look at the cooling. Actually, I think we're probably relatively okay. Yeah, looks like we're fine. Doesn't need that much at all. Alright. Semi-clad would get us a bit more top speed. Fully clad would get us even more. But it's a little expensive. Alright. Suspension-wise, we would like to have a little bit of a sportier drive here. I need to look at the markets and see what it's looking like. As of now, fun budget, light sport budget, and track budget. Well, those all have the right word in them. And those are all pretty good scores. It's actually doing well in pony budget as well. And, you know, the rest of the budget categories. And normal fun as well. So that's pretty good overall. And the price is low. I think it's kind of successful. As of right now, an 8.3 seconds 0 to 60, a 16.0 quarter mile. And those aren't, again, super amazing scores. But for a car with 3 cylinders, 1 liter, non-turbo, to do 140 miles an hour, isn't, I think, a bad thing. Let's see what it would do around the airfield track. I'm just curious. Would do a 133. So slow, but slow car fast, fast car slow, cheap car fast. One of those phrases is probably a good description of what this thing is. I think it would be fun, personally. But we'll see if it will handle the markets. Bum bum bum. Alright, so it looks like we haven't added too much time doing this fun project. Only 2 years and 8 months. And am I available? I am not. But, I mean, we do have more money. We could fund it more. I don't know. Probably not necessary. So we could take some funding off of this. More. There we go. Right there. So those match up. 2 years, 8 months. 2 years, 8 months. And the factories will be the magnets, which still need that galvanization. We already have some automation in there. Tool quality is very low on the engines. I wonder why that is. Let's see. Max shifts, 2.2. So yeah, we don't need that much more in the way of engines. We're going to be making as many cars as possible. This looks good, sure. But really, we need to be looking at the regular one. Eco. So 8,752. I wonder if the sports version is actually not going to be that much more expensive. It's just like, hey, you could have this version that's going to get great miles per gallon, or you could have this version that's going to get abysmal miles per gallon, but it's actually fun to drive. All right, we'll look at the markets here. The markets show not much demand for the sports version, which is fine. That's exactly what I wanted and expected. A lot of that is because it's not marketable in Fruinia, which seems to be the second biggest market for this car in general. However, look at the difference in Gazmea. Lots of people want it. Now that's going to change when I mark this thing up to 60%. That probably would be fine. That changed the whole thing. Now people actually kind of want that sports version if it's going to cost the same, right? Well, of course, we need to have a markup on that as well. So the production split would look something more like this. You know, then a 40 and a 60 markup, and a much lower split to the sports version. That gives us in total of $1.3 billion for a project, a break even of 14 months, sellable in October 2013, breaking even December 2014. That's if everything stays the same. And usually they don't. I think I went pretty safe on the numbers for this car, so I think we're safe to sign off on it. But first, I'm going to run through everything because I've made mistakes in the past. Crossed my T's, dotted my I's, got us down to 12 months, exactly 1 year for a break even. Just doing some minor tweaks here and there, brought our grand total of the budget down just a little bit. And I think we will be good to go here. Let's sign off. Alright, signed off. The first Mark IV vehicle is in engineering. Well, let's look through some time today, and at least see how the Bionic Mark II is going to do. Okay, end of the year, I'm going to say times are pretty good. We sold out of every car that we're currently building pretty much until the very end of the year. Then the Zoids started to show some overage. The Bionic just came online. It's only been out for 2 months. One of our lower profit years, but we did spend a lot of money engineering the Magnet and the Bionic, so it's okay. Let's pause the game. Let's look at our economy. Very big increases in premium. That should be good for the Zoids. Probably not going to be amazing for our new Magnet, but that's alright. It could be good for the Magnet Sports version, right? So let's look over things. The Bionic, our V12 front-engine sports car, turned a profit in its first couple months, but we're probably a little over the top on that markup. So we'll bring that down to a somewhat reasonable, actually completely non-reasonable, 111% markup. And that should help sell through those. The Zoids, it's only showing a little bit of an overage, not too terribly much. But we could reduce how many of those we're building at the moment. It looks like the demand's still pretty high. It could have just been a little 1 month slump or something else came on the market. The Magnet Mark III is still doing okay. It's still selling a bunch of them in the area that it can. So we're going to move forward quite a bit here. We're probably going to go till 2013 when the Magnet Mark IV comes online. Let's see. Let's revise the Magnet Mark III. Let's produce a bunch of these so that we have some overage as we head into the crossover period. End of the year, I think we just had another major spike. I was doing so well at keeping everything in stock, and then all of a sudden everything ran out. One of our better years, $2.1 billion, 530,000 cars sold. Big increases in prestige as the Bionic and the Zoids are selling very well. Let's look at our economy, as I accidentally minimized the game. Not what I wanted to do. It's back. Okay. The economy... Yeah. We're going to end this campaign with a huge boom. Looks like things are going obnoxiously well. Okay. Well, let's, yeah, I'm going to get right through 2013 as well. And it looks like I'm actually going to... No, I'm going to keep those the same. There's no way that economy keeps spiking the way it is. I'll keep an eye on it. Let's get through 2013. Okay, end of the year, the Magnet Mark IV just getting into production, a $1.8 billion year. A little bit less because we had a little bit of a crossover there where Magnet Mark III was done and Magnet Mark IV took over. I'd like to take a moment and say congratulations to the Bionic Mark II, $111 million per month of profit, and I think one of our most sharply profitable vehicles in history for something we're only selling 5,000 units to in our own territory. Interesting. Very interesting car that has been. Let's see. The Magnet Mark IV. How's it doing? Took a couple months to be profitable. Looks like maybe the markups are a little bit high on it at the moment. And for these high volume vehicles, kind of expect that. So we need to chill those out a little bit and just do high volume numbers to make this thing sell. right? No, high volume numbers to make profit. That's the words I was looking for. And other than that, I think it's pretty good to go. Even the sports version has been selling. It sold nearly as many as the regular one. How very interesting. If it was for sale in all the markets, it could be doing just as well. But I'm a stickler for performance, and I wasn't going to have that 100 pounds weigh me down. I think we're good. I think we're good. Let's do a little summary here. So, total profit. Currently, Truffle Mark III in the lead, 15 billion. Jaws Mark II doing very well, 11 billion. Sharky Mark II, 4 billion. Zoids Mark III, 2.2 billion, which is pretty amazing for the kind of car it is. And the Bionic Mark II, as I said, a pretty staggering success for as new as that car is. Already 2.8 billion. Pretty impressive. And then the Magnet just coming online. Now, once we end the campaign, right at the end of it, I'm going to look at all of our cars and see which one was the most successful, and we'll go over our entire history, but we'll wait till we end the campaign for that, and we'll be ending this campaign next time here in Automation. Thank you as always for watching, hope you enjoyed, and look forward to maybe another crazy car to build in the end. I'm not sure. Leave your suggestions if there's something you want to see me do for the last car. It's pretty much no risk, so whatever you want to see, we'll do it.